Hello and welcome to the Air and Space Live Chat. I'm Marty Kelsey. I'm one of the hosts of STEM in 30, an Emmy-nominated TV show for middle school students, and we have a great show lined up for you today. Today we're going to be talking about virtual learning. Everybody right now is going through some form or fashion of this and looking forward to the fall and seeing what it's going to look like for school. And so we brought in some experts to answer your questions about virtual learning. Today, we're joined by Hunter Wengert and Betty Jill Moore, who are amazing teachers and are part of the museum's Teacher Innovator Institute. We're also joined by NASA astronaut Mike Massimino, who spent a little bit of time learning to communicate virtually with folks when he was in space. Thank you all so much for joining us. All right, we're going to get started, and as we go through today, please let us know where you're watching from and what questions you have. Leave them down in the comments section. Hunter, I want to start with you. Tell us, what are you teaching next year, or do you know?
Yeah, so I'll be teaching fifth grade at my same school, and we're starting virtually a week later than we had originally planned. So we're starting at the end of August, fully online, completely virtually, at least until October 16th. So they've set out those first several weeks will definitely be virtual, and then just kind of going from there, seeing how things are looking at that point.
And Betty Jo, you're part of a working group within the Teacher Innovator Institute on virtual learning. Tell us about the TII group and that working group.
The TII has set up a task force essentially for teachers to help learn new technologies and ways to integrate and get kids engaged in the learning process, be it virtually. So we are compiling lots of resources for everybody, and then there's points of contact for all those resources so teachers can contact us if they need assistance, because it's all about collaboration right now. It's all about moving forward together because we are all in this together.
All right, and be sure to put your questions down in the comments section and let us know where you're watching from. Mike, you've got the unique experience of having lived and worked in space. What has that taught you about communicating and this virtual remote learning world that we're in now?
Yeah, Marty, thanks for having me here today, and hello to everyone that's listening or watching. There's a lot to that. We train to do that on the ground. When we would go in a simulator to train for a mission or just a regular generic training exercise, we typically had a control center working with us. And in space, of course, they would be on the Earth and you'd be separated because you're in space. But they were in the control center when we did those simulations even. We were in our own little world, more or less, in the simulator. They were just a few buildings away from us. But we even had the delay fed in there that we could not obviously meet with them in person, but we would have to figure out how we could communicate the best way over that distance. And of course, it wasn't. They trained us how to do that, how to be very precise in what you're saying, and it was important for us too to know what we said and what we needed, how that would be received by the control center. I also worked for years as a Capcom, which is a spacecraft communicator, in the control center, and I think that what I learned maybe even more from that experience being on the ground, supporting the people in space, was that you really needed to let them know that you were still there for them. And that might sound kind of silly, but even sometimes, in a sim or as an astronaut in space, you ask something, you don't hear back for a while. Like, well, maybe they're on a coffee break, or maybe there's another space mission there. No, I mean, they're obviously thinking about it, but human nature is like, well, they forgot about me. And you would say, hey, what's going on? So I found being in the control center was really important to respond right away. As soon as you heard that they had a concern, you fire back, we copy, we got this, we're on it. And then I would check in with them to make them know, let them know that we were still working on it. So that communication is really important. And I noticed, like, even in my own life now, some of the projects I'm working on where I would typically meet with people every once in a while, we're not doing that anymore. And the communication slips. We're not talking as like we would normally, and as a result, things get mixed up. And I didn't say what happened. You wonder what happened, and it's because the communication is lacking in the way we're dealing with things now. So we have to, I think, do whatever we can to do things like this. Get on whatever tools we have online or the phone or something, just to have people there, knowing, just keeping that contact going. I'll finish with this. When I had trouble in space on my last spacewalk, I made a very bad mistake that almost messed up the whole mission, really, on the telescope. And they came up with a solution. But I remember I was really upset about this. and I had to try to maintain my stay in the game and couldn't get too upset because we still had to work through this spacewalk. But one of my best friends was the Capcom, and that was Dan Burbank, and just hearing his voice, even though he was somewhere on the planet, I knew where he was. He was on a planet really far away, but just hearing my friend's voice in my ear every once in a while, I knew they were doing the best they could, and there was some comfort to that. And I try to remember that now. Just a friend's voice, or you can be a mission control for other people. Just that communication, hearing each other every once in a while, I think means a lot.
And teachers that are watching today, I know just from my own kids' experience, hearing their teachers' voices, on those daily meetings and calls was so important to them. So don't discount that, because I know it gets frustrating at times. My wife actually bumped into my son's teacher, and they did a FaceTime call, and man, he just lit up getting a chance to see her face after a few weeks of not. So don't discount that. And teachers, we are in debt to what all you all are doing in this time. Now, we've got a ton of folks watching. I'm going to go through a few of these. Oklahoma City, Iowa, Missouri, Oregon, West Virginia, Ohio, Southern California, Northern California, Los Angeles, Pasco, Washington, Wisconsin, Patterson, New Jersey, and Fort Wayne, Indiana, all tuning in. Thank you all for watching. Please put those comments and questions down in the comments section. Also, Betty Jo and Hunter, we have a lot of the Teacher Innovator Institute teachers watching, and I encourage all of you all watching to try to stump Betty Jo and Hunter, get them some tough questions here and make them squirm a little bit. So a question has come in, and somebody wants to know, what's your one big tip for online learning? Hunter, let's start with you.
The best thing that I found for my sanity, and I think for my students and their families as well, was to take anything you thought you could accomplish and cut it in half. Everything had to be smaller. So shorter videos, shorter assignments. If you had a project, everything needed to be scaled back. Because as much time as I put into making videos, making resources, anything that I was giving to them, they also had that time in front of the screen for this subject, any other subject they were doing. And maybe in class, they could do it on their own, 5-10 minutes, but everything takes longer as we're doing it virtually. So just scale everything back and do everything in smaller chunks. And I found that to be really, really helpful.
Betty Jo, how about you?
I'm in agreement with Hunter. Screen fatigue definitely wears on you very quickly. But at the same time, I think establishing a routine for me back on March 13th, when we found out we were not returning to school on Monday, coming home and doing a routine and helping students establish a routine was a great way that I figured out I was going to get through that next period of time before I'd be able to be done for school for the year. So it helped my sanity, and it probably helped student sanity.
Mike, do you have a tip for teachers and parents watching?
I'm actually sort of a teacher now. I'm a professor of engineering at Columbia, so I had to teach online in a different format. Where my class, right at that point that Betty Jo mentioned, whenever that was in mid-March, we were actually getting ready to go on spring break, or we were on spring break or something, but we were told after spring break, we're going online for the rest of the classes. And so they told all the students to stay, go home or stay where they were or whatever. But so there were some things that I noticed, and again, it was a few hours, so we really couldn't change the length and the content so it was kind of just doing my lectures online with them. But I just got off of a Zoom call with the faculty, with the online learning group we have at Columbia, and we were talking about things that the problems and I don't know if this applies to whatever age, but we had some of the students wouldn't necessarily, believe it or not, seem to be paying attention. It's bad enough in the classroom, I could kind of tell who was paying attention and who was, with the computer, doing, and now they all have computers, at least in our classroom. So I'm like, okay, so having them show up, they can, there's a lot of them around the world. They have a time difference, and it's too early for me to wake up. All these things were happening. So one thing that they asked me how I handle that, and I said, we take attendance. Again, if you're in your grade school, you take, but I take attendance of these college students, and I also have an attitude grade, so that if they show a good attitude, there's 10 points. And these kids are concerned about their grade point average. So there's 10 points in their grade. I've always done this since I've been teaching. I've been teaching it for 7 years. Is the attitude. When I was an astronaut, we were evaluated all the time. Tests don't stop when you get out of school. We were tested and evaluated, and it was always, here's your score. This is what you did. You're good. You stink. Work on this. You know, we were told just like you had to tell like the little kids. So, and part of that grade, typically from us when it was a simulator kind of practical evaluation, it was 10% for attitude. So I included that. So I let them know, hey, this is tough. We all have to get through this. But, if you show a good attitude, you show up, you do your best, you do whatever you're going to do, you're going to get a couple extra points out of it. I don't know if that's helpful or not, but it seems to be working. It was a suggestion that everyone liked in our faculty meeting. So there you are.
Awesome. And if you're watching, let us know your big hints and tips down in the comments section. Share those with the other teachers and parents that are watching. We'd love to see those and gather those resources for the upcoming year. Mike, we've got another question that kind of follows up on this. A high school level aerospace engineering class in St. Louis is looking for ideas or resources that will work virtually. Do you have any thoughts for them?
Yeah, I don't know. I think, I'm kind of in the same boat. What I do in my class is I try to give them projects. So my class is not a test class; it's more project class. So on each lecture, I give them, and I've done this when they're in the classroom, but it seems to work pretty well online. That for each lecture, there's a mini project assigned as homework, whatever that is, and typically because of the resources, we sometimes can go to a lab to do things, but I don't want to. For those assignments. So they're just sort of things just based on whatever the lecture is. I'll give them a question about maybe designing a lunar habitat or compare these spaceships or whatever it is. And these are things they can, if they're interested, they can go online or they can use the books that we have or the resources. So little projects like that seem to work pretty well, I think. And then I also gave them group projects. Now, the group project was different this year because they were all away, but we had already formed the teams. It's a little bit different because last year we had half the semester we were in the classroom, but so those teams were already formed and the topics were picked out, but they worked on those things virtually. They couldn't go to the lab, but they could try to work on those virtually. So I think it's more the type of project. One of the classes I teach is a rocket building class, and we need to do that class correctly. We really need to have them get into our machine shop and do some work. And I think we're going to be able to do that in small groups. You may not have that capability in your school, but if you're able to do that hands-on, if you do have hands-on where they build something and you've done that before in the shop and you can't do that, depending on I don't know what the school rules are. I think we're going to have something like 8 students at a time and they have to be 6 feet apart. So only one person can be near the machine tool. The other ones are got to be surrounded. Whatever those are, I think we're going to try to work within those guidelines and give it our best shot. The other thing I think to remember in all this is that hopefully this is not going to be the situation forever. I don't think we're going to necessarily be free will. I think the world has changed. So I think there's going to be a lot more online teaching than we've had before because I think there's a lot of good things about it that we can learn from. When people are away in different places or students have to be somewhere else, we can help, especially in the colleges we have, in universities. But I think really what we got to do is just do the best we can. It's not going to be perfect. Just try to get through at least, this first semester, and hopefully things will be better in the second semester. So I try to keep that in mind too. It's not going to be perfect. We're going to do the best we can.
Betty Jo, how do you engage students in a hands-on way virtually?
A couple different ways. Just as Mike mentioned, sometimes you got to do group activities and let the students work with groups. Another way, believe it or not, hands-on is still okay. And as you may have heard the story, I went around the neighborhoods dropping building materials off at students' houses. I drop it off at the door and run. So they wouldn't, be in contact with me. They knew they were coming, and then they built, and then I went back around later on and, a week later and picked everything back up to test for, do an engineering design process. But sometimes we also have to take into consideration what might be available in a student's home, because we as teachers are creative anyway. And I think that if we kind of put ourselves in their home or wherever they're living and kind of think, okay, well, what would they have? What would somebody normally have? And maybe improvise and just become improvisation artists so students still have that hands-on opportunity. So whether it be something dealing with an egg and an egg drop or something else, there's always ways to get kids engaged and still do hands-on and still collaborate all at the same time. I mean, a lot of kids have cell phones. They can talk when they're not necessarily with the teacher. And then a lot of the platforms nowadays do have a group tool method, so you can put them into groups. Well, so it's not over yet.
I want to make sure that everybody watching understands what Betty Jo just talked about. She got all the supplies, drove them to the kids' houses, had them build, went back and picked them up and brought them back and tested their earthquake structures. And that's the kind of thing that I think is going on across the country with amazing teachers, you know, reaching out to the kids and doing these things. And even though it's virtual, still making an impact on those kids. And I think it's absolutely amazing. Hunter, we've got a question. Somebody wants to know about success stories that you all have had with virtual learning. Do you have a good success story from last fall?
The spring, I think overall it went a lot better than I expected it to. I was still able to work one-on-one with a lot of students that I had previously been working one-on-one with, or like finding ways to do small groups through these video conferencing platforms. One of the things that we do at the end of our school year is we get to composite volumes, so different kind of L-shaped boxes essentially, and that can really be a hard concept to grasp and figure out how to find those volumes for fifth grade students. And so, I showed my kiddos how to kind of rig together an example. I had a couple Kleenex boxes that I stuck together, and using some different digital whiteboards and different things to show how we would find those different volumes. And they were still really able to grasp it through my kind of models that I was able to figure out how to make. They could figure out how to make it on their own with what they had as well. And so we really were still quite successful with a pretty difficult concept that they were still able to learn and master through virtual learning.
Awesome. Well, we just got a question in, and please put those questions down in the comments section. We've got a little bit of time left. We want to get to as many questions as we can. And somebody asks, do you think it helps to have a dedicated workspace for students, for a student who is working at home, to help it feel a little bit more normal? And up on the screen, you're going to see some of the workspaces of the team that put on these live chats. You'll see the workspace that I have with a box, and the computer sitting on a box, and it's not ideal. And I think there's a Death Star Lego model from one of our editors on one of the desks. And so we've got these different setups. So what do you all think about having that dedicated setup? Mike, do you have a dedicated setup at your place?
Well, you're looking at it right now. I mean, this is I've turned one of my an office in my apartment into a studio. So this is where I try to do these calls and presentations. I used to do a fair amount of speaking, as you can imagine, and at big events. And we're not having big events anymore. So I've turned this. Now I've got a high def camera, and hopefully you're hearing me okay. This is a new lavalier I got, that I'm trying out. So I've gotten some pretty sophisticated equipment here. It's like harder than flying a space shuttle figuring this stuff out. But I think that I think having it set up so you have that normalcy makes sense to me. I try to do the same. You just feel better about it. I feel better now that I have this setup, so that when I have to teach, or we're going to do a Zoom call or a thing like that, I know it's all set and ready to go. So it works for me.
Betty Jo, how about for students? Do you think it's important for them to have a space?
I do. If their living conditions permit it, I really think they need that, because they need to be able to break away from personal life to student life, just as adults do. And I just, even if it's just a little corner, I think it's really important for them, so they have their own school area. In some cases, they're sharing it with siblings. So, I mean, if they all have just kind of their own little dedicated space, I think it's beneficial to them.
Okay. Make sure you put those questions down in the comments section. Also, let us know where you're watching from. We've got Winston-Salem, North Carolina, St. Louis, Philadelphia, Arlington, Virginia, Lincoln to North Carolina, the Ukraine and Austria tuning in, Calgary, Maryland, Bulgaria, and Puerto Rico all checking in. So thank you all so much for tuning in. Also, let us know your hints and tricks down in the comments section as well. We're getting one question, a whole bunch coming in, and it is, what resources does the Smithsonian provide for teachers? And Hunter and Betty Jo, I can see you both smile at this because I feel like this is right in your wheelhouse. So Hunter, you want to start with us?
Yeah, the first thing that immediately jumps to mind is the Learning Lab that the Smithsonian has. It's a fantastic platform. You can check out essentially all their collections digitally, and then you're able to also curate your own collection. So you can have students go in, pull different artifacts from different museums. Maybe you're doing a lesson or a unit on space travel. And so you're going to go through and you're going to find all these different artifacts that you can put into your own collection and either have students learn through that by looking at these objects, or they could do the same thing themselves and then go in and actually create their own online exhibit. And you have access to pretty much all of what the Smithsonian has access to as well. And it's free and it's easy to use. And I highly recommend, if you haven't checked it out yet, to go look at Learning Lab.
And we will put the link down in the comments section. Betty Jo, what about you? Do you have a Smithsonian resource that your go-to?
Hunter definitely mentioned it. Aside from the STEM in 30 videos, which I use a lot, yeah, there you go. The Learning Lab is amazing because look at what I found in the Learning Lab. This is actually somebody's patch, but there's a collection. Right there you go. There's a collection of these patches in the Learning Lab, and you can do amazing history lessons through understanding what every element on the patch represents. So the Learning Lab, and the coolest thing about it, it is free, and it's just so user-friendly that kids really get excited about learning that way, object-based, and kids, need that visual sometimes to help them with the learning process.
That's pretty cool. I can't get those patches anymore, by the way, Betty Jo.
I'll get you one. I have two of them. I have two of yours, Mike.
When I was at NASA, we had them in our mail room, and they ran out. And
I have two of yours. I'll send you one. No.
I have plenty. You keep them. I was saying that's pretty cool. You're able to get them, but so please, Mike, don't send it to me at all. You keep it. Enjoy
Mike,
it.
What's one of the pieces of symbolism in your patch that Betty Jo just showed? What's?
I'm not sure if I'm looking back here. I don't think it came out in the patch. This is a higher fidelity version of it, but so I don't know if this could go on for hours, but patches are a big deal. And in the military especially, they were a big deal. And the astronaut office in the beginning was all military people, and then now we're mixed, about half and half. But a lot of the traditions from the military were injected into NASA, and that's what we have going on now. And so the patch is really important. When I was on The Big Bang Theory, I got to appear on a couple episodes, and I said, look, to make this like real, we need a real space flight has three things. One is we have a crew photo. So we took a crew photo with the flags and everything, just like we were a real crew. The second thing was a patch. So they came up with a patch. We had this patch that was designed for the crew. And the third thing was the space flight. We didn't get that, but we got 2 out of the 3. But the patch is really important. And so with the way the rookie has to design the patch. So I was a rookie on that one. So I designed that one. And everyone just tortures you. Oh, no, we want this. We want that. It's the way to pick on the rookie. But I think it was on someone's tie. They had this image of the shuttle coming up to get the Hubble. And I thought that was pretty cool. So we kind of worked with that design. We were in all the crew is from the United States, so we're flying over North America. That's another piece in there. And there's a couple things that are hidden that I can see in this patch that I don't think you can see on the patch that Betty Jo has. So you couldn't put things in that the Public Affairs Legal Counsel would see and then say, no, you can't have that in your patch, right? But you try to hide things. So we had 2 spacewalking teams. One group was the dogs. Jim Newton and I were the dogs who'd let the dogs out. That was like our theme song. And this is really helpful, isn't it? It's educational. And the other group were the space chimps, okay? So we couldn't like put a monkey in the patch. They wanted to go for that, or a dog, you know. So what we did is that just off the coast out here in the Atlantic, there's a banana that looks like a cloud. And then there's a cloud above Florida that looks like a dog bone. I don't think that resolution showed up in the actual threaded patches, but it showed up in the thing I got behind me, or in the stickers, because they're a little bit higher resolution. You don't have to sew it with thread. So,
but that's a great example of being able to look at an image and learn something from it, and really learn more about the crew that flew it and the mission that they did. And there are so many things like that the Smithsonian helps support with Learning Lab. I'll give a little plug for STEM in 30. It's a TV show for middle school students. At the beginning of September, our first show of the school year will be coming out, focused on World War II and victory in Japan. We're actually going to socially distance and go into the museum tonight to film that. So we're really excited about that show coming out. And then each of those is followed up with a live chat just like this on that topic a week later. So the second week of September, we will be talking about World War II and answering student questions there. So we encourage you to check out STEM in 30 on there. Learning Lab got mentioned. Also, there are some virtual tours of the museum. And then somebody is asking, I teach 6th grade ELA. Are there lessons, or is there a way that they can get involved in this conversation as well? So I know you all are both kind of it's very STEM focused, but I think a lot of the things that we're talking about today carry over to all of the subjects. Betty Jo?
Yes, I completely agree. There's a lot of social studies wrapped into it. There's a lot of language arts wrapped into it. You can get into persuasive writing using the things that are in a Learning Lab. There's lots of ways to pull in other components of the curriculum through the resources that museums have. I mean, and if I think outside of science, I can think of so many things for language arts and mathematics and social studies. So there's so many opportunities there. You just sometimes have to think outside the box and realize that most of these resources are already available to teachers, and they're gems. It's a gold mine of stuff that you can use to really get your kids excited and also embed all of your standards.
And I think it's also important to know that it's what's going to work for you. You know, as a teacher and as a parent, you've got to find those things that work for you to be able to work. Because if it, I know that when I used to take professional development, when I was a teacher, I'd hear about some stuff and I'm like, I don't think that's going to work in my classroom. And so I wouldn't do it. And other things would be like, oh yeah, that's awesome. You know, let's pull that in. So I think finding those things that work for you. Somebody commented on here, and Mike, you kind of mentioned getting a new camera and a microphone. What kind of equipment do kids need to be able to do this online learning that's coming up for a lot of them, at least at the beginning? Hunter, you want to start with that one?
Yeah, our district, I'm very lucky in that our district has made sure that all our students have access to tech. So if they already had something at home, they were able to use that. If not, they've been able to take home like Chromebooks, iPads for the lower grades. So everybody has something with them. And I know that's not the case everywhere. But that's what we're working with. I don't expect them to have anything else than maybe just the Chromebook that we've sent home. And so I'm going to make sure that everything I do can be done on that, and not expect anything beyond what I know they have access to.
Okay. One of the questions that has come in, and one that I really wanted to ask you, and Mike, I want to start with you. I want you to talk about the support team that you had when you were on your missions. You know, there were only a few of you actually on the shuttle. How important were the folks on the ground to the success of that mission, and how can that carry over to this online learning?
Well, they were, of course, we wouldn't have had any success without the people. You wouldn't have had a mission. You wouldn't have even got one toe out the door toward the spaceship without help from so many people. I think that how it would help us now. What I think of is that we are all still together as a team. We just separated, and we were separated from those people who helped us. The control center we still were able to talk to, but the other engineers and scientists, instructors that could help were always available to them, kind of in a backroom situation or whatever. Everyone contributed, but I think it's much more than that. It's also the people that prepared our meals, the people that packed our equipment, the people that cleaned our locker room. I mean, each one of them knew that if you would ask them, what are you doing? They would be saying, we're getting people to space. And it didn't matter what your job was. We all had that sense of it. And it was important to try to build those relationships, I thought, to let everybody know how much you appreciated what they did, and to build those relationships and trust. I think trust is a really important thing between people when you're working together. And we had that trust between the people that were going to get our spaceships ready or spacesuits ready or whatever they were doing for us. And I think they trusted us that we were going to try to do the best job we could. We trusted each other on the crew. And I think we have to remember that now, that our teams are still in place. We're just separated. And sometimes, we've had, like I said, we were teaching last year and then we got pulled away. So we had an opportunity to build those relationships with the students. And now I think it's a little bit different. I think I'm going to have some students in my class in the fall that I know, but there's going to be a lot of them I don't. So I think one thing we need to do is try to build that trust up without knowing the people. I've been to some companies where they've hired people and they've never met them. So there's not like our team is now off doing this and we know each other. Some cases where there's a brand new people. And so I think we need to figure out a way to try to introduce them. We talked about that as a faculty too, about having a get to know you session or videos or whatever it might be. But we're going to have to somehow try to get to know each other over distance. It's one thing if you already know the person and you're communicating. It's another if it's a brand new relationship. So,
Betty Jo, what kind of support system do you have in place through your district?
Well, first of all, we have social emotional support because that's, this whole isolation thing is going to wear on people after a while since we've already been, 18 weeks or more. But we have a real strong network of teachers within the district and within schools. And of course, you have that camaraderie because like I said in the beginning, we're on this together. It's not like it's just one school doing this. It's everybody. It's the whole country essentially. And it's not just primary school. It's also, a lot of colleges too. So, I mean, it's something that we have to think about. And as Mike said, you got to develop that trust and that open line of communication, as he mentioned earlier as well, is going to be key in order to make sure that we can succeed together and make sure our students are getting what they need out of learning online.
And Hunter, what suggestions do you have for folks that are maybe looking for a support system? I know a lot of parents maybe feel that they're on their own. So what advice would you say to them?
Yeah, I would decide what it is that you want to focus on, I guess. And then there is a group for everything, whether it's a Facebook group or like a professional development kind of online website. I know I just found one recently for 4th and 5th grade math teachers that I've become a part of. There's still a lot of virtual professional development going on. And those would be like my 3 big ones, really. Decide what you want to focus on, if it's social emotional, if it's math, science, whatever you want kind of your focus to be going forward, there is going to be a group out there for that. So look on Facebook, look on, within your district, if there's any groups already meeting. I know my district uses, it's called Schoology, but they have a whole bunch of different groups within there, different content, grade levels. So if you do just a little bit of digging, there is a group out there where you can connect with others and that are in the same boat, that are trying to find the same kind of answers that you're trying to find, and they'll be there to help you.
And I think it's important too for parents to know that, one, teachers are trying their best, to get the stuff across to the kids, but also you're not in this alone. As a parent, the teachers have a little bit of that support system from their schools and their districts, but parents, there are other parents that are going through the exact same things that you are. So reach out to them, talk to the teachers and really try to support each other as we go through this. And that kind of leads to the next question that we got. How important is it to keep a schedule? And the question is, how important is it to keep a schedule to keep sane? So Mike, how was your schedule when you were training for missions, and how does that apply to now?
I think there's a lot of applicability to it. when we were training, occasionally we would go out in the field and train for a few weeks out in these somewhat uncomfortable environments, really cold places or very hot places, different places around the world, mainly in North America. But and then in space, you're in space, and you're away from your daily routine. And what we found in all those cases, you do the training like that, so you're ready when you get to space. And it's similar to the situation we have now, where things are completely different. You're away from everybody else. You're isolated, and we didn't have communication in a lot of things. In space we did, but some of the adventures we would go on, we didn't. And it was getting that routine together, such that you got up and took care of yourself. You get your exercise, have meaningful things to do, and keeping to that schedule is very important when you're in a sort of situation we're in now, where things are a little bit different. We're at home a lot more. We don't have our normal daily routine. You have to try to build that up. And I remember one of these exercises we went on was with the Canadian Army. It was a cold weather course where we were out in Cold Lake, Canada, which is a very cold place. They named the lake correctly. And it was in the middle of winter. And I remember the sergeant who was, there was a group of these Army guys that were our instructors. And the sergeant said, you have to brush your teeth every day. Because I don't care if, and it wasn't because of bad breath. He says, I don't care if you don't shave. That's fine. But when you're out in the field, you have to brush your teeth every day, twice a day. And it's because it makes you feel like a person. It's something that you do normally. You should do that every day. And hygiene is important. And it was more of a mental thing than it was the health of your mouth. So I remember that. And in space, it's also very important to keep that schedule. Exercise every day, have meaningful work, stay in touch with your family, and all. It's really important to have that schedule. If you start veering away from it, you could start bad. It's just not a good way to go.
Well, that leads into our next question. Somebody asked how important exercise is to keep the mind focused. Hunter and Betty Jo, what are your schools putting in place to get those kids the other things, the physical education and the music and some of those things? Hunter?
I'm not sure what we're doing this fall, but I know this spring they still had PE and music and art just like they normally would. And so our PE teacher would give them, activities to go do, or, games that they could play, or the dance to do along with their normal schoolwork. And I know I would encourage them to, okay, you've done 3 lessons now, maybe take a walk around your living room or go do some jumping jacks or something to get yourself moving. We do it in class, and I wanted to encourage them to do it on their own as well.
Betty Jo, how about you?
Our district is doing classes like normal, so they'll still have PE, they'll still have music class and art class, dance, because that actually is beneficial for a well-rounded student, if nothing else, and also for good mental health. But also, it's a matter of it's online. It's just something different, and the PE teachers did a great job of making sure they were getting that energy out and taking brain breaks as necessary. And the music teachers were phenomenal, because I'd have my little sessions going on and I'd have kids say, hey, can I play this song for you before I play it for the band teacher? I'm like, okay. So it's just something different. We just have to, kind of embrace what's going on right now and get along with it. But I think just keeping everybody active is a good thing.
Awesome. Well, we've got just time for one more question here. And somebody asked, it's kind of a weird time for everybody. So can all three of you talk a little bit about how important it is to journal or make art or write a song or do something creative in this time? Mike, you want to start us?
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to do. Have something like that. We found in space that you needed some sort of hobby, and that that hobby was generally keeping a journal or taking photographs. So having some way to have an outlet of things, and because you're limited in space of what you could do. We did have astronauts who painted as well, or like to read or whatever. But generally, writing and is something. Or if you can draw, if that's what you want to do, I think it's very important to do that just as an outlet. And then it's good to have that as a record. We used to say in space flight, you're left with, if you come back, you're left with 2 things, your memories and your photographs, and your memories fade. So we were encouraged to take a lot of photographs. And I think in this case, maybe you can turn that into your writing and your memories, and your memories will fade. So I think it's important to somehow chronicle what's going on. I think it's a good outlet. It's creative, and you'll be happy if you've done it.
Hunter, what about you?
Yeah, I think it'd be great to kind of work this into what we're doing in class as well. Try to bring in these creative pieces, these writing, drawing, make a dance, write a song, whatever you want to, just like we would normally try to do, maybe a little bit more so now. Try to bring it into school so they get maybe something that they might not have done before. They get some exposure to it, and then can hopefully start applying that to their time outside of schoolwork. And they say, oh, I really like to make up dances, so I'm going to start doing that on my own time as well, and kind of feed that out a little bit too.
Nice. Betty Jo?
Kind of tagging on what both of them said, I personally scrapbook. I scrapbook a lot. When COVID hit, when we left to go home from school, I thought, man, these pages are going to be empty because I'm always taking pictures in class. But in reality, they're full because I went out in the community and I took pictures because I wanted kids to remember that they're now a part of history. These kids are actually in a huge part of history that they can pass on to generations and say, oh my gosh, I remember when COVID, and it's that slice of history that's going to divide time for them. So I went out and did a lot of photos for them, but at the same time, a lot of kids have cell phones, so they can actually do the journaling themselves, take photos and journal, because it is it's good for relaxation and it's a good outlet.
Awesome. And as a matter of fact, my son grabbed my phone. Mike was on one of our previous live chats, and my son was sitting here off camera and took a selfie with Mike in the background. So he's been doing a little bit of that journaling of his experience as well with using my cell phone. But well, we've reached the end of our time today. I want to encourage everybody to check out STEM in 30 as a resource for distance learning. We've got a lot of resources out, including segments called My Path and Smithsonian Science Starters that have hands-on activities, typically that you can do with stuff that you find at home. And then we've got experts talking about how that connects to real-world science. Our first episode comes out in September on World War II. And then we want to encourage everybody watching today to head over to Twitter when this is done. At 2 o'clock, we'll be starting a Twitter chat using the hashtag virtual learning chat. Follow that hashtag along and join the conversation. Let us know what you're doing and get some ideas from some other amazing teachers. Hunter, Betty Jo, and Mike, thank you all so much for joining us today and sharing your wisdom with us.
Bye-bye. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Thanks
you
for watching.